Today class we will start with psychological assessment. So the definition of psychological assessment is the overall assessment or overall evaluation of human behavior, and also we talked about uh, psychological testing is part of psychological testing is part of psychological evaluation. Okay, so we would be talking about what is psychological test. Okay, psychological test can be defined as an objective and standardized procedure for measuring a psychological construct, using a sample of behavior. So it is an objective, and standardized procedure. Okay, when you're talking about objective, which is without any subjective bias or favoritism. Okay, so a objective and a standardized procedure for measuring psychological construct which you have chosen the selected psychological construct, and also making use of a sample of behavior. Okay, then we will be talking about the characteristics of psychological test. Okay, this we already discussed. Okay, a brief review of that. Okay, first one, objectivity. So without any subjective feeling, subjective influence or favoritism. And standardization. So there is a procedure for standardization. Okay, we will be talking a bit later. So not every test is a standardized test. Only a test which have gone through a systematic procedure, okay, and established is called as a standardized test. Okay, and we talked about reliability. So reliability is a repeatedness or consistency of scores. So where the person is taking the test or who the person conducting the test, if there is consistency of scores. Okay, even the test taking or the respondent, if he is taking test, okay, maybe over a period of time. Okay, if there is gap of days, weeks, or months, but if the test is giving the same consistent results, okay, it is called reliable. Even when the test is being administered by number of people for the same respondent, the score should be same. Then talked about validity. So validity is the intention or the purpose for which a tool or the measurement is made for. For example, if a psychological test is made for measuring intellectual ability, if it is measuring only intellectual abilities, that is called as having validity. If it is measuring other than the construct, psychological construct like intelligence, then it is lacking validity. Then we talked about norms. So norms are defined as the average performance of the group. So when you're talking about the average performance, that average performance is taken as a norm. So based on that, the different norms can be designed. Okay, we will be talking a bit later, okay, in the coming classes that about norms. So norms can be age norms, grade norms, percentile norms, okay, based on the criteria also. So criterion norms. So a norm is defined as the average performance of the representative sample which the test is checking. Okay, then we talked about practicability or usability. So when you're talking about practicability, so a psychological test is a test which is having practicability in terms of it's not being too lengthy or too short, and also it's not taking too much of time. For example, if it is taking some hours together, maybe fatigue can interfere with the test performance of the test taker. So to avoid such type of things, it should not be too lengthy or too short. For example, we have questionnaires where right answer would be 5, 6 to 7. Okay, so such type of lengthy questions can also have impact on the performance of the student or the person who is taking the test. So it's better that when you're talking about length is not too lengthy or even too short. For example, if you're talking about the intellectual and very few items cannot give the complete picture or measure of the psychological construct. So adequate number of questions, adequate or The time of administration should also be reasonable enough, and also when you're talking about language use should also be according to the test taker level, not from the test giver level. This is about practicability. So only when a test is having all these characteristics, it is called as a psychological test. Then we will be talking about types of psychological test, because psychological test can be broadly divided into 4 primary types. Okay, the first one is clinical interview. A clinical interview is a diagnostic or interaction where a clinician is trying to ascertain, know the what particular distress a person is going through. Okay, so it can be an interview, it can be an observation where a clinician is trying to find out, ascertain, know the reason, okay, and to find out, diagnose, okay, characterize, okay, the distress the person is going on. Because as we know, there can be different types of psychological disorders, and if a clinician suspects that it can be a underlying psychological disorder, so we try to assess, okay, in clinical interviews. Okay, it is a diagnostic interaction where a clinician, like a psychologist, a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, is trying to undergo or conduct an interaction with the patient or the subject, okay, who have come to him, so that to ascertain, to know what the particular what the particular condition is of. Okay, so it is called as clinical interviews. Okay, these clinical interviews can be of duration, okay, 45 minutes to 1.5 hours or 2 hours. Okay, we call them as sessions. Okay, so each session can be of 1 hour to 2 hours. Okay, in general. Okay, so these sessions, the clinician or the professional try to interact with the subject to know the underlying causes or underlying reasons for the particular condition or the present situation of the subject. Okay, then we have assessment of intellectual functioning. So as we know, the psychological construct like intellectual ability, which is also called as intelligent quotient. If a psychologist is interested to measure the particular abilities of a subject, okay, they administer a set of questions. Okay, the set of questions will be designed to elicit or to know the intellectual functions of the intellectual abilities or capacities of the subject through a questionnaire, and also a they also called as back. A questionnaire is a set of questions which are administered, and there is a purpose for that. Okay, so when we administer, okay, we can come to know the IQ levels of the subject. Okay, some examples like bachelor's adult intelligence scale, okay, fourth edition. So by administering this one, whoever is having the age of 16 and above, so 16 and above adults can administer this particular bachelor's intelligence scale to know their intellectual abilities. And also, if someone is below the 16 years, there is bachelor's, okay, children's scale, which is designed to know the children's intellectual abilities. So when we're talking about the differentiation, so the test content would be designed according to the levels. Okay, when you're talking about adults, the content would be different, where the adults can answer. When you're talking about children, so according to their level, the test items will be designed. Okay, we will talk in the coming classes. Okay, so this particular Wechsler scale, it have sub, okay, components like verbal comprehension scale, which consists of, okay, similarities, vocabulary, information, okay, supplemental subtest, okay, comprehension. Second one, it have perceptual reasoning scale, which consists of block design, okay, blocks design, they need to arrange the blocks, matrix reasoning, okay, visual puzzles, supplemental subtests, okay, like picture comprehension, okay, figures, okay, etc. Then it have a part which talks about working memory scale. This working memory scale, it's designed to know digit span, arithmetic, supplemental subsets like letter number sequence. Okay, so this is under working memory scale. The next one is the fourth one, processing speed scale. So this subset have symbol search, coding, supplemental, okay, subsets like cancellations. Okay, so the Whistler's intelligence scale have the four parts. First one, verbal comprehensive scale, perceptual reasoning scale, third one, working memory scale, fourth one, processing speed scale. Okay, so when a subject undertakes a test, so you need to answer all the questions. You need to answer, respond, so that they would be given scoring as per the manual, and the overall score will give the interpretation of the intellectual abilities of a person. So this is how a psychological construct can be measured using a psychological test or a tool. Okay. Then we have personality assessment. So as we know, personality evaluates, okay, thoughts, emotions, attitudes, okay, behavioral traits, okay, that consist or contribute or that comprise of personality. Okay, so all these issues or all these constructs are we try to assess under personality assessment. Okay, and also, for example, to administer to children to know their strengths and weaknesses and how they are good in handling their emotions. Okay, under personality assessments. Okay, the personality assessments tests are, okay, Minnesota multifaceted personality inventory. It is called as MMPI 2. Okay, and 16 personality test, factor test 5, Raymond Cattle, okay, Millen clinical multi-axial inventory 3, that is MCMI 3, and also it includes, especially when you're talking about personality test, they also include projective test. Okay, we talked about projective test. Okay, projective tests are designed in such a way that they try to elicit the unconscious, okay, motives of a person. Okay, where a person is projecting, okay, is in a way. So best examples are Rorschach ink block test. Okay, so the Rorschach ink block test, they have pictures. Okay, five uh, five cards would be having black and white, five cards would be having colored one. Okay, ink blots would be, they are ambiguous. So based on the motives of the person, whoever is, based on the person whoever is taking the test, okay, so they try to project their inner feelings by identifying the ink blocks because they are different for different people. Then we have thematic apperception test, TAT, and draw a man or draw a person test, okay, where a person is trying to draw a picture, especially children when they draw a picture, so they try to tell their internal conflicts. Okay, by looking at the picture, we will come to know the relationships, the agony they are going through. Okay. Then we have objective test. Okay, objective test of the multiple choice questions. Okay, they are, for example, like answering true or false. You need to pick any one. Okay, like we had Likert scale and the Thurston scales, okay, which give us 2 or 5 point of answers. So in this way, for example, if you take Minnesota multi-personality inventory, so they have 567 items, which has to be is answered as true or false. Okay, so likewise tests are called as objective test, and we talked about projective test. Best example is to shop ink block test. Okay, as I said, they have ink blocks for which a person has to make up and tell a or describe the card. To describe the ink blot which they see, and when they're trying to tell, so they're trying or they are projecting there. internal feelings, and this is how we can come to know about that personality. Okay. Then we have behavioral assessment. So behavioral assessments are done by psychologists, okay, to know the complete picture of complete behavioral assessment of the person. Okay, they make use of different methods like observation, interview, and as we talked about clinical interviews, so clinical interviews can also be a part of this particular behavioral assessment. So would be behavioral assessment will start with clinical assessment, okay, extended with interviews, okay, interview and okay, observation. As we talked about observation which gives a clear picture, okay, about what a person is saying and about what a person is saying and what is the physical or the mental state can be looked at. So these are the four basic psychological or types of psychological tests which are broadly divided. First one, clinical interviews as we talked, then assessment of intellectual functioning, then personality assessment, then behavioral assessment. Okay, so these are the broader one under which we have different tests. Okay, then we will go about with a topic called test construction. So as we know, what a psychological test is. A psychological test, as we said, is an objective and standardized set of questions. So this particular test, so how they are constructed. So this particular topic would be talking about the test construction. Okay, so there are different steps involved in it. Okay, we will try to look at them. So if you observe this particular slide, okay, they are talking about broader 5 steps of test construction. So any test, if they have to be constructed, okay, they need to be arranged sequentially or there is a plan for that. Okay, there are certain steps, okay, which give us a direction to go about with construction of a test. First one, planning the test. So planning has to be done, okay, to which, what is the purpose, on whom you're conducting, okay, and all that. Okay, we will talk about each and every step in detail. Okay, so first you try to know the broader 5 steps. Okay, there are 8 steps in detail. Okay, we'll talk it later. So first one, planning the test. Okay, planning has to be done. Second one, preparing the preliminary draft of the test. Okay, we need to make a preliminary draft. Okay, that we call item construction and all that. Okay, we will talk bit later. Then trying out preliminary draft of the test. That is, you try out. That is, they call 3 tryouts. Okay, while study they call pre-tryout. Then second one, the last one is the final one where they try to okay run or administer. Then they try to know the shortcomings of the test before administering the subjects. Okay, so we're talking about test construction. Then they evaluate the test based on the evaluations. Okay, they go for construction of the final draft of the test. Okay, so these are the 5 basic okay, test construction steps. And then we will talk in detail about each and every step. Okay, so the first one, or as I said, the basic steps, okay, which are actually 8, the which we talked about is the broader one. Okay, then we try to go in detail with 8 steps, okay, as we talked about. The first one, identifying a need. Okay, so when a psychologist would like to construct a test, then what is the need? So why you want to construct a test? So there should be a need for that. For example, if a researcher or a psychologist is interested to construct a test, you need to find out whether is there any similar test already existing to measure particular psychological construct. For example, if already there is a test and again you're trying to construct the test, may not be of any use. It can be a repetition. So if, for example, a specific purpose, specific need, for example, a researcher, if is interested to construct or know a particular topic of his interest, which is not covered in already existing test. Okay, if already existing test, if my particular topic is not covered or missing, then the researcher will go with a test construction. Okay, if already existing, because the process of test construction is a lengthy process as it's a time consuming. It has to be done out on a large number of sample of representatives at each and every stage. So it's a time taking, expensive. So mostly they try to go with already available standardized test. If there is no standardized available test which can address my particular concern or my particular interesting topic, then researcher or a psychologist would like to go with test construction. So first identifying the need, why they want to construct a test, okay, and which particular construct they would like to construct a test. Okay, if that particular need emerges, then they will go for constructing a test. So based on that particular area, if no test is addressing, no test is available for that, they will go with test construction. Okay, then the actual procedure starts. Then first step which has to be done is planning. First, if there is a need, then based on the need, the planning should be done. For example, planning is the step where the main goal of evaluation is to collect valid, reliable, and useful data about the students. For example, if a tool or a test is designed to know the students' performance or their evaluations, or if any instructional objective has to be measured. The instructional objective is a area, a particularly like how effective the teaching learning process is. I'm interested to know, and if no available scale is addressing that particular area, so they need to go. So according to that, they will plan up the test. Okay. So to plan, the first step is determining the objectives of the test. Okay. So what are the objectives? So objectives are talking about what specifically they would like to measure with the help of this particular test. Okay, so what is the main reason or main concern to construct this particular test? So that particular selected, okay, pattern or this particular psychological trait, what they're trying to measure has to be specifically detailed or explained, or it should be clarity to the person who is the test constructor. So having a clear-cut objective will lead to the successful completion of the test. So you should have a clarity, particularly if you're talking about personality, which particular area is trying to construct a test. So having objectives, clear-cut objectives is the first step. Then based on that particular objectives, preparing test specifications. So when you're talking about test specifications, it is talking about which particular psychological trait the test is trying to measure who is the test taker, or who would be my representative sample, at what level. For example, as we talked about, is he a child or is he adult? Or if it is, for example, we talked about instructional objectives. Okay, so which particular grade we are talking about or referring to. So my particular target, okay, test taker, so I will be specific about his age, background, grade, and also the purpose. Is it to know the previous knowledge, or what knowledge is having about particular selected psychological construct? Or for example, if you're talking about a subject, or if you're talking about a entrance test or a entrance exam, or you want to diagnose a child, you'd like to know how much knowledge you have. So before getting into a test, so it should be designed according to that. So all that specification should be wrote down beforehand. So that is called as table of specifications, or in simple terms, yeah, blueprint. As we have blueprint, which talks about the entire thing, in the same way, we have this particular table of specifications or blueprint, just talking about the construct that we're trying to measure, the target, okay, representative sample, their age, their level, okay. So what type of method data collection would like to go with, so how you administer, so how you gather information, so how they need to respond. So everything would be covered, and how their responses would be measured or corrected. So everything would be in the table of specifications or blueprint. Okay, so this particular table of specifications or blueprint consists of 4 major steps. Okay, for example, what weightage is given to instructional objectives? Okay, we have different instructional objectives. So what weightage is to be given? Okay, and what is the weightage to different content areas? Okay, if we're talking about content knowledge, so which particular areas, how much weightage you're trying to give them, and type of items. Okay, is it the objective type or the essay type? Okay, as we talked about objective and the other type of items. Then, okay, so how you going to conduct? Is it a individual test, a group test, and how you going with scoring to get meaningful interpretations? Okay, so when you talk about types of items, as we talked about, like they can be essay and objective type. Okay, so under planning, so we will talk about all these things. When it comes to step 3, okay, practical choices, it is talking about. Practical choices is nothing but identification, okay, of the developmental scale. So how will this item be designed, and how it is getting or eliciting the required information? Is it through objective type, or is it through essay type? So based on the purpose. If my particular construct, for example, intelligence, and if it can be measured, or the information can be gathered in a true or false question, I can go with that. And if I'm talking about personality, for example, which may not be, or it's not maybe adequate to go with true or false, and uh, better to go with a open-ended questions where they can give their responses, so that we can try to evaluate them, because different people have different opinions, feelings, emotions. So maybe one particular type of like true or false will not be fitting. So based on that, you should talk about the practical choices. So when you're talking about respondents, their responses, so how they should be under part 3. Then 4, pool of items. Okay, once you decided that this is my psychological construct which I'm trying to measure, then these are, like for example, I'm going with true or false type of questions. Then I should prepare pool of items. When you're talking about item is a question or a statement which is trying to measure my selected behavioral pattern or psychological construct. So I need to write or prepare statements or simple terms questions covering the entire psychological construct. For example, intelligence. So I should be covering or writing statements which will adequately, which will completely measure or give a measure of that particular intelligence. So to know, to assess, okay, all the areas of intelligence, so questions should be prepared. Okay, so that preparation of questions covering all the aspects of intelligence is called a pool of items. As you know, pool is collection of items. Okay, why we calling it a pool? Because we are collecting statements or we are preparing statements which will give adequate, complete measure of intelligence. It is an intelligence test. So to cover each and every aspect of intelligence, maybe I am writing some hundreds of questions or statements initially. So this is the reason it is called as pool of items. Okay, large number. Okay, so whatever I think it will give me a measure. So I'm trying to write them out. So this is called as pool of items. As I have huge number or a large quantity of statements or questions or simple terms, they call item when you're talking in terms of test construction. So I need to try out. A tryout is the one step where I am trying to refine. If I have 100 questions, I am trying to refine, find out of 100 statements or questions or items, so which particular items are of my use or they are giving information regarding if it is an intelligence test. If it is about a instructional objective, so I am trying to know which particular questions are addressing or giving me the information. Okay? For this, I cannot tell on myself, but I need to test on or I need to administer the test on particular target test takers. If I'm talking about children or if I'm talking about grade 6 students, I need to administer the all prepared full of items or questions to them, and then I need to find out, okay, which question is giving me my required information. So that is called as tryouts. Okay, we generally go with 3 tryouts. Okay, this is called as pilot test. Okay, if I have thousands of students, okay, I need not go with all students. So I am selecting a sample of representatives. Okay, the entire 6th grade students, whoever is available, they are called as population. So at this stage, I am not conducting or administering test of items for the entire population. It is not possible, and also the test is under construction. So I need to select a representative few number of people, which is called a sample. So from population, I need to select sample. So far there is technique called sample techniques we have. In research methodology, generally they would have told you the sampling techniques. Okay, based on this sampling techniques or using the sampling techniques, I'm trying to draw a most representative people of the 6th grade. It's called sample, a limited number of students. So I will administer this particular questions on this sample to find out which particular items are giving me the meaningful or required information regarding if it is an intelligence test. The items or statements which are of no use, which are having confusion, which are not addressed properly, which are not prepared according to the test are rejected, or I am trying to strike off them, remove from this particular pool of questions. So this is how refinement will take place. So this is called as pilot or pre-test. And again, this administering is done for complete of 3 times. The first time I do, second time, then third time. So by the end of the third tryout, I should be having the most appropriate selected items which give me the required information or which can measure my particular psychological construct. Okay, so this is step 5, which is called as tryouts and refinement. I am trying out, okay, they try out generally 3 times, 3 tryouts, so that I can refine my statements or items which are of use, and here I am narrowing down from thousands or hundreds of questions to the required number of correct items. This is step 5. Then step 6 is establishing reliability and validity. Okay, as we talked about reliability, so reliability is the consistency of scores. Okay, so how consistent the items which are prepared are giving consistent responses. Okay, so reliability, and we talked about validity. Validity is the purpose. Example, if I said it is an intelligence test, maybe I have written questions or items which may be measuring other than intelligence. So I need to strike them off, and I need to find out the valid questions and reliable questions. Okay. So sixth step is establishing reliability and validity after the third tryout. Then the step 7 is standardization and norms. Okay. So this particular process of standardization is done when a test is having validity and reliability. And based on the validity and reliability, I am also preparing norms. As we talked about norm is a average performance of the representative samples. Yeah? Based on which I can give a meaningful interpretation. As I said, the average performance is a average intellectual ability of the group. So if someone is scoring below, they can be below average, and if someone scoring above that, they are above average. So this will help out in preparing or interpreting the test results. So these norms can be age norms based on age. Okay, what is the average performance, and is someone preparing, or is someone scoring above average or below average based on ages, based on grade. For example, we talked about 6th grade student. So all 6th grade student, so there are equal grade, and among them, what is average performance, and who all are above average and who all are below average. So it can be age related, based on age, based on grades also, based on percentiles, or based on certain criteria. So norms are established. So when we talk about standardization, so standardization is trying to establish, trying to fix what is the appropriate time. Okay, when I tried out, okay, once that's pre-test. Then second and the third one. So I'm also trying to know what would be the appropriate time. So how much of time is required for the completion of this test. So what or how much time duration should be given based on the finalized items. For example, out of 50, if I have left out with around 60 questions in the final form, so for answering that particular 60 final selected items or questions, so how much of time is required based on their levels. If they are 6th grade students, so according to 6th grade student, to answer that particular 60 items or 60 questions, so how much of time should be allowed? Okay, and how they should be scored. What is the scoring procedure? So all this would be under standardization process. So establishing the time duration, scoring procedure. Okay. Example, when you talk about scoring, so how much of marks should be allotted for right and wrong answers? For example, if it is true or false, so how much weightage should be given to a true question and how much of weightage should be given to a false response for one particular question. For example, question one, if someone is answering true, so how much score should be given? And for the same question one, if someone is answering no, so is he going to get a mark or no marks? So this is all decided under scoring procedures as part of standardization and also establishing norms. Okay. After this, they will be administered. Okay. Administered again after standardization and norms established. Okay. To check out the final scale, which is called as the final or the stage where you're trying to ascertain, check again, validate what standardization and what norms you have established and whether they are adequate for the successful completion or successful measurement of the psychological construct. Okay, so at the final refinement stage, you try to show it to the experts the selected items. Okay, once you have written for the pool of items, there also you go with experts' opinion, either to include in questions or to simplify them. And as I said, vocabulary. So is that good and all that? Okay, subject experts you consult. In the same way, when you have prepared all these things, okay, before you prepare the final printed form, which is called as manual, after establishing standardization and norms, they try to again conduct or administer the final form of test to know still any limitations, or any shortcomings if they have, they would like to overcome, check again so that they print the manual. So manual is a guide which is talking about the entire test. So what the test is designed for, who is the examining or the test taker, okay, what level, what age, what grade, okay, how much of time should be given, and also as we talked about type of administration, is it a individual test or a group test, okay, so how much of time should be allotted, how much of time should be given to them, okay, if they have given answers, okay, so how you're going to score, what is the weightage, scoring procedure also they're talking about. So after scoring, if you get a score, complete picture, okay, for example, out of 60, if someone is scoring 30, so how you interpret that? If someone is getting 20, if someone is getting 50, so how you trying to give interpretation? Okay, so scoring and interpretation. And based on the interpretation, so what you giving the final measure of that particular psychological trait. So all this would be printed in a manual form. So before that printing, so they will go with a administration. So that is called as the final step of a tryout or refinement. So once they are satisfied with the complete process or the procedure, then they will print the manual. So once the manual is printed, it is ready for the usage, that is they can be administered on the targeted or what the test is designed for. Okay, based on ages, based on grades, based on the purpose, it is ready to use for the common people or the general public. So this is about the complete okay, steps for the test construction. You start with the need and you end up with preparing or printing a manual, so which is the complete or the final form which is ready to be used for the population. So whoever is taking the test, okay, they will get the final result because it is talking about entire scoring procedures also. Okay. Then if you're talking about principles of test construction, okay, test items, okay, then test items, item writing, then item analysis. So these are the steps which are generally followed or these principles are taken. Okay, as we talked, okay, when you're talking about item, as we talked about principles, so all these principles would be taken care during the 8 steps of test construction. Okay, test items. So when they're writing test, okay, they will decide either there should be true or false, or there should be open-ended statements, or there should be okay, match the following, fill in the blanks. Okay, like for example, odd one out, sequences, especially they use for reasoning abilities. Okay, matching and completion of sentences. Okay, sentence completion test we have. Okay, fill in the blanks. Then forced choice items is okay. They give 2 pairs of statements. Okay, you need to pick any one. Then vignettes. Okay, which talking about a synopsis or a short story they give you. Then based on that, you need to come up with conclusion or you need to give a final what the story is going to be. So based on that also, it's a projective test where you trying to know the internal unconscious conflicts when they try to express or when they try to continue that. Okay. As we talked about the second principle item writing. So at the time of pulling the questions, you need to write questions. Okay. The items are written, taking care that they are very clear. Okay. Avoid long items, as we said. When they're too long also, understanding them would be a little bit difficult. Okay. And the questions are prepared according to the level of appropriate difficulty. Then we are also trying to avoid double barrel questions. Okay. The sentences which have double meaning. Okay. If a word is having different synonyms or different meanings, so such words should be avoided because the test constructor view would be different and they can be taken from the other view from the test taker. So to avoid such confusions, that has to be removed, and also it should be mixing of both positive and negative. For example, when you're talking about personality assessments, okay, and the choices can be a bit two choices, or when you're talking about personality, it can be 5, okay, point responses as we talked about, like that, and cluster scales, okay, which can give you complete, okay, picture. And also you will have a choice where you can say that I am in between, okay. There would be a statement, and for that statement there can be the given responses can be like agree, disagree, strongly agree, and strongly disagree. So it is not only talking about whether you agreeing, but also it is trying to give the magnitude of your likely, more likely or more dislikely. It's not about liking, but it's also talking about so how you like it strongly, very very strongly. Okay, so this is how 5 point, 7 point scales also will be there based on the requirement, based on the objective. If a test is designed not only to know whether the person is liking or not, and also if the test objective is to know to what extent either they like or dislike. Okay, very much liking, very much disliking. So likewise, okay, the questions can, okay, they can be checklist. Okay, so when we're talking about the options or responses, okay, then next principle is about item analysis. Okay, so this item analysis talks about when a statement or item is written, okay, when it is clear without any confusion, and making sure that it is, you're trying to measure what it is made for or designed for. And also when you have decided with the responses, whether the responses will be dichotomous, that is two, for example, true or false, or polycotomous, more than two responses, okay, like multiple choice questions, or for example, it can be our liked skills where options are many, okay, and this particular item analysis is talking about difficulty level, okay, whether the items are appropriate. When you're talking about a item, it should have a power where it can discriminate between, okay, test takers and test, okay, the one who is able to answer, one is not able to answer. For example, if you're talking about intelligence, the question should have this power where they can discriminate between the respondents. For example, item difficulty talks about, or it should give the analysis of what is the correct percentage of responses, correct responses out of the test takers. So item difficulty is called as. So item difficulty says that when a test is administered, a test item should have a power which can discriminate, which can give you the percentage of the correct responses being marked by the complete test takers. If 100 people have taken test, for item 1, how many of them have answered correctly and how many of them could not answer correctly. So item should have that power. So item difficulty. Then item discrimination. So this item discrimination talks about discriminatory power, okay, based on, okay, the group which have answered correctly and the group which did not answer correctly. Okay. Discriminatory abilities. If a person have answered a question correctly, okay, so how they are when taking as a whole score, so how they are getting segregated between the toppers and the lowers. Okay, so it should be having this particular power. For example, Okay, so item discrimination determines whether people who have done well on particular items have also done well on the whole test. Okay, so how these people, for example, answering and how they are placed as a whole score, so that discrimination is called as item discrimination or discriminability. So this is established using, okay, point by serial method, and there are certain methods. This is about item discrimination or discrimination. First, we talked about item analysis. So, items when they are analyzed, the questions or the items what you have done, okay, they should have this particular abilities, which is called as item difficulty. So, item difficulty talks about a item should have the ability to tell how many of them have answered correctly and how many of them answered wrong. For example, if we have true or false question, so item difficulty talks about how many people could answer correctly. Okay, and for example, if items are not prepared or at the time of tryout, if everyone is scoring 100%, it is of no use. So this is the practical application of item difficulty. When I've written a question where everyone is answering that question, so it is not trying to give a picture where a person or a population, they have 100 people, they cannot discriminate based on their intelligence. So items should be prepared in such a way that it should be based on certain level where not everyone can answer that. Okay, so it should give that difficulty, or in simple terms, it is a difficulty level. If it is of no difficult, everyone is answering, no use, because a test is administered to know intelligence, and if everyone is getting, okay, 100% and everyone is intelligence, okay, maybe that's not my purpose of, okay, creating or constructing the test. With the test, when I'm administering, I should be able to know who is intelligent and who is not. So for that, a item should have difficulty level, okay, where it's talking about how many have answered and how many have not answered. When we talked about item discrimination, okay, a item, or when a person is answering a item, and also when I'm talking about the whole score, the whole score should be able to tell me who is the toppers and who is the lowers. Okay, it should be able to discriminate and should be able to tell me or find out who is average, who is above average, and who is below average. So that is item. Okay, that is called as item discriminability. Item difficulty as item discriminability. So when my items have this, then only they can measure and they can serve my purpose. Okay, so this principle has to be taken care when I am trying to construct a test. So item writing, at the point of writing, I should take care they are clear, no double barrel, no confusion, vocabulary is according to the ability. Then what type of item should be? And also when we're talking about item analysis, each item should have this difficulty level so that it will separate answered and unanswered, and also item discriminability, which can give me who all stand on average, who all below average and above average, because that is my purpose of construction. So we have completed this one and we will continue in the next class.